Hey friends, it's me, Danny, and on this episode, we're going to be breaking down and talking about my favorite movie of all time, Salem's Lot. And I'll be joined by the horror master himself, Ben Ottaviano from the YouTube channel Boogeyman Ben is going to be joining me. It's all on this spooky episode of Everything 101. Let's get to it. Hi, friends, and welcome. I'm really excited about this episode of Everything 101. So, first in our movie series, we're going to be talking about Salem's Lot. I wanted to start with my favorite movie of all time. Now, if you have never seen Salem's Lot, here's the breakdown. The movie is a TV series adaptation of the Stephen King novel, Salem's Lot. And the series came out in 1979, November 17th and 24th. It aired on TV in two parts. And the reason that this movie is my favorite is because of the absolute profound and deep of impact that it had in my life. I tell people that this movie, there's one thing to say is something scared you, but this movie didn't scare me. It terrified me. It just absolutely shook me to the core. Now, granted, I was only 8 years old in November of 1979, and I talked my dad into letting me watch it. And of course, my mom wanted to smack him after that, after she realized that I was terrified and wouldn't sleep in my room for 3 weeks. But that's what the movie did to me. And of course, eventually moved on and got over the fear. And later on, as I grew up, watched the movie more. And it just became my favorite movie because it just tapped into so much of my imagination. And there are some iconic scenes that are just amazing. But in the book, a writer, Ben Mears, he comes back to the town of Salem's Lot where he grew up until he was about 11 years old. And he's come back to write a book about the Marston house, which is this the neighborhood scary house. We all have seen those houses before, right? And so he's going to write a book about it. Well, mysteriously, right as he comes back into town, two people by the names of Straker and Barlow have set up an antique shop and they've purchased the Marston house. And so now Ben is writing his book and he's staying in a boarding house while he's writing and staying temporarily in Salem's Lot. And so things start to happen. And the mysterious part is that people see Straker, they have not seen Barlow yet. So there's a big small town mystery. Who is this Barlow guy? Well, strange things start to happen. And the next thing you know, people are turning into vampires. So it's a great book. It's well written. Just reading the book is scary. So with that, I want to jump right into the discussion. I'm going to bring on Mr. Ben Ottaviano. Ben has a YouTube channel called Boogeyman Ben. I want to encourage you to jump down in that description below. You'll see a link to his channel. Please check out his channel. Click subscribe and the notification bell. His channel is growing all the time. And he has thousands of subscribers already, and help him out with more. But he has some great videos, great content. I keep up with his channel. I watch his reviews, all of his great videos. It's really cool. If you love the horror genre, you must subscribe to Boogeyman Ben. I'm telling you, it's a great channel. All right, with that, let's bring on Ben Ottaviano. Ben, thanks for hanging out with me here on Everything 101. I appreciate your time, man.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So first, we want to talk about Salem's Lot, but the first
Yeah,
thing
absolutely.
I want to ask you about your YouTube channel, Boogeyman Ben. How's it going with all that?
hmm It's good. I mean, it's going well. It's kind of, I had the beginning of this year has been a little tough. I think just because of everything that's going on in the
Yeah.
world, it's been a little hard to get motivated. But I'm starting to get back into it pretty strong. For me, the channel's always been an outlet. Growing up as an only child, the television was kind of my friend, and for some reason, I was always drawn to monsters, be it Scooby-Doo cartoons or whatever. That was kind of my introduction into monsters and things like that. And it just grew into something that I loved as a kid, that I loved pretend, and I loved the makeup effects as I got older and got into things like Creepshow and Friday the
Yeah.
13th. And yeah, so that's where this room kind of came from. And I was inspired by a friend of mine named Chris, who went by CCG 1171, that was on YouTube. And I used to watch his YouTube videos, and it kind of just inspired me to try it on my own. And yeah, I mean, he was a big inspiration for me to even do this, because I'm very camera shy. And for some reason, I had to get over my own little stage fright, if you want to call it that, and sort of putting myself out there to the world.
Nobody likes the way they look.
Yeah, no, and it's like I don't like my voice, and I think it's just weird. It's like when you hear yourself recorded. It's just it's a strange thing, but I've grown to get accustomed to it. I don't like go back and watch all my old videos to see what I look like, but it's fun to edit them, and I have fun trying different things. I've sort of grown in terms of my editing capabilities and lighting and things like that over the years. So it's fun. It's just a great outlet, especially in times like this where you need an outlet to sort of take you away from, just the stress and chaos that are going on a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you what got you started in the whole horror genre. You touched on it a little bit, but when you were young, like how old were you when you really started getting into horror films?
Well, I mean, I loved Halloween. I loved the spirit of Halloween and the season, and I was big into dressing up. I think the first character I remember loving was the Incredible Hulk, the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno series. So that was the first monster I ended up loving. In terms of movies, I think the big ones for me, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about Salem's Lot, but after that, it was like American Werewolf in London, Creepshow. I got big into Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th. And I think it was just for Jason, it was The Mask that sort of drew me to it, because I was pretty young. I was like 8 when that movie came out, part 3. So I think it was just, I was curious about it. And I liked the effects. I really liked how did they make, Jason look like his hand got split open. And for me, it was a magic act, where some people looked, because I mean, the 80s, yes, that was the boom of the slasher, but it was also something that most people wouldn't want their child watching. And so there was a lot of, I got a lot of criticism for it in school. I was always kind of drawn to the monsters. I went to private school. I went to Catholic school. So they really didn't like the fact that I was into Freddy Krueger and Jason and Michael Myers. So it's funny. I think it was just, for me, it was interesting. And I wasn't into sports. I was into books, and I was into movies and storytelling. So for me, it was like they were dark stories, but something about it just captured my attention, and it just grew as I got older.
Yeah, I totally get that. Well, let's jump into Salem's Lot. What you're saying is a lot of the reason that I call this my favorite movie. I don't have a favorite anything really. Like I can't even narrow down a favorite song, a favorite band. I have bands I like, but I like a little this. I don't like that about them. So I can't even narrow down a favorite anything hardly. But I can say that this is my favorite movie, and I think because, like you, my imagination is just massive, and there's so many parts of this movie that really just spoke to me. But now I saw this the first time when it first came out. Did you see it when it first aired in '79?
I did. I saw part 2 because they split it over 2 weekends. It aired on the 17th and the 24th of November.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I always say my grandmother, she's 101. She's still with us, but she is the reason that I like Salem's Lot, because she watched part 1 with my grandfather, who didn't like horror movies. So I don't know how that happened, but she told my mom, well, Ben likes creature features and things like that. Maybe he'd like part 2. Now I was 5 when it came out.
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember watching it. Yeah. It scared me so bad. I think it was the first time I can remember being absolutely terrified. and I was a 5-year-old kid, and I think the scene that set me off, that put me over the edge, was Mike Ryerson's scene
Oh,
in Jason Burke's house. That was
yeah.
when I absolutely lost it, and I remember I sat there through the whole thing. My mom said I didn't say a word, and I just remember as a 5-year-old kid having to go to the bathroom. I had to go to the bathroom so bad, but I was too scared to walk down the hall to our bathroom because we lived in an apartment that had a long, dark hallway that
Yeah.
led to where the bathroom was. I didn't want to walk down there, but I just remember that whole thing. But yeah, Mike Ryerson is the scene that put me over the edge. Yeah, a 5-year-old kid watching that is pretty. A lot of people say, "How could your mom let you watch that?" I'm like, well, it was a different time, and there wasn't the internet. There wasn't these
Yeah.
things that would tell you like what it's really going to be, and it was a television movie. So they don't make
Absolutely.
television movies that intense, especially back then.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was 8 in 79.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, my dad didn't want me to watch it. But I talked him into it. I was like, Dad, come on, man. I'm 8. I don't get scared.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you basically just said exactly how I word it, that this is my favorite movie, because I tell people it didn't scare me. It terrified me. I say it dented my brain. I mean, it is just because it was the first time I remember that I did not want to walk down the hall, and I didn't want to go to my room by myself unless somebody was in the back of the house. And I think that's, you look back at a lot of the movies that were made in the 70s and 80s, and it's easy to roll your eyes at them now, but even now you can look back on Salem's Lot and see things that they did really well. And
Absolutely.
I mean, and I'm a big music person.
Oh,
And
Harry
oh my
Suckling
gosh,
is amazing.
yeah, it is an amazing soundtrack. So I was going to ask you, what is your favorite scene? But is it Mike Ryerson?
I think there's two scenes that always get me in Salem's Lot, and I think the first time you see Ralphie, the first time he shows up at the window gets me. Not so much the second scene in the hospital. I like that scene a lot, but the first time you see him, and I think it's because I think it's the fact that it's Danny's bedroom and that his brother's outside, and the fact that, and a lot of people say, well, I don't get why Ralphie's wearing pajamas. He wasn't taken in pajamas. But I'm like, well, but if you read the book, they mess with your mind. And that's the whole thing. It's like, that's all Danny sees is his brother's outside. He's going to let him in. And then just the way that it was shot, the fact that it was shot in reverse. So it actually started with Ralphie in the window and he was on a dolly crane, and then they hoisted him up. And the fact that they did that in reverse for the movie, it's just off looking, just the smoke and the fact that you can tell he's not on wires. And it just, I don't know, that scene just really gets me. And then Mike Ryerson's scene, I think, in the rocking chair, because that scene is still terrifying. And I think it's what Jeffrey Lewis did with his body, because he kind of sits up out of the chair and he kind of arches his back a little bit. And he was just standing on like the balls of his feet. He wasn't on anything. It was just the way he talked and the contacts and just everything about that scene, and that he's almost whispering to Jason Burke. I think that's what makes it that much scarier. And still to this day, there's many movies I can fall asleep watching. I can't fall asleep watching Salem's Lot as much as it's my favorite movie. I can't fall asleep watching it because there's certain scenes that just, it's the tempo cues, like when Ralphie is taken in the woods, or when Danny Glick sits up in the grave. There's certain cues that just like, you'll jolt out of your seat watching it, or if you fall asleep watching it, it's just going to make you even more terrified. So that's one movie I can't relax to. It's like I have to be on even to this day, seeing it as many times as I have, it's still effective. It's very effective.
It is very effective. And you mentioned the smoke and shooting that scene backwards. Ron Scribner had kind of explained that to me. And I had, when I watched it for even when I was adult, I didn't realize that it was shot backwards.
Yeah, me neither.
And I guess I've never noticed that there was something weird about it, But
Hmm.
then when you go, oh wait, it was shot backwards. It's almost like in parts, like the smoke is almost coming off of him
Yeah.
in points. But I thought, man, how old was Ron Scribner in that? What, 12-ish
I
or?
think I'm trying to think how old he is. I think I might be guessing wrong, but I think he was between 12 and 14 maybe in that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Uh and they put a curtain behind him. So that's one thing, they had a black curtain to hide the thing that he was on. So that's like
Hmm.
when he's out the window, that's why you can't see it. And then they had the smoke over it.
Yeah,
So that's like that, but that's what was blocking the equipment, was that curtain they had. So
right.
and he was talking about being fitted for that when I met him, like how he was fitted into that harness that they had to put him
Hmm.
in. Yeah.
Well, I know he had, I've heard him talk about, well, I think he and I texted some, and he was talking about having to go to the hospital with one of his contacts got stuck in his eye. So, you
Oh,
know,
I didn't know. He didn't tell me that.
yeah.
Uh,
So I'm thinking, man, that must have
I
been
don't know how they wore those things.
I don't
Those are like
either.
glass contacts.
Yeah, I've heard several accounts of how uncomfortable they are. I've heard Brad Savage talk about it playing Danny Glick. Um, but one of the things about that window scene with Ron is it just kind of starts, just the window, and of course you see the smoke, but I have to really, really go back to the soundtrack
Hmm.
because it starts on, you don't even hear it at first, but it
It's
starts with
slow.
that boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
and it's
it's like
building.
like the Jaws theme almost.
It is.
Yeah,
And I'm just thinking, man, what a musical genius to build that up. And then you have that kind of harp doing the chromatic
yeah.
falls.
Hmm.
And I think all of that with the weird smoke and of course his face was for the 70s, his face
Oh,
was pretty,
terrifying.
it was
I
off.
think Danny Glick scared me. But Ralphie, I don't know what it was about. I think it's because Danny spoke and Ralphie didn't. So that was the
Yeah.
other thing that kind of, it's creepier, I think, that he doesn't say anything. I don't know. I don't know why. That always creeped me out a little bit more about Ralphie. And and he was kind of like, there was so much buildup about Danny dying and Marjorie Glick being so distraught over, and that was
Mhm.
something Ron brought up when we were in Ferndale for the premiere thing. He said, "Why did my mom just forget about me in the movie?
Right.
Because she's always talking about Danny. She forgets that Ralphie's been missing and all this."
Yeah.
And it was just funny. And I was like, "Yeah," I said, that's not right." We were cracking
Yeah.
up about that.
And she
But yeah,
wakes
just
up going, Danny, where are you, Danny?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, that's another scene that gets me every time. But yeah, yeah, he that scene, it's and it's also the way he just sort of glides out of the smoke into the
Mhm.
at the window. I just love that scene, and it's still so effective even to this day. There's just
Yeah.
certain moments from that, and again, it's tension building, which I don't think a lot of filmmakers now know how to do. If you look at Carpenter, you look at even films like Black Christmas, there's so much tension in the 70s and the 80s that it built towards something. Whereas
Mhm.
now they just want payoff. They want payoff. They want it to
Yeah.
be fast. They want it to be quick. And I like that tension. You earn that scare with that tension, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I think that was one of the problems I had. We were going to talk a little bit about the 2004 version of Salem's Lot,
Mhm.
but I think that was one of the big problems I had with that was it was just kind of being played out. It's just this happens and this
Mhm.
happens. And the
Yeah.
acting, I mean, I don't like to sound mean. I'm not saying I'm
No.
a great actor, but the acting was just very stereotypical in my mind, in my opinion, because like, for example, if you watch the scene with Marjorie Glick, well, all of a sudden she's almost standing in place, embracing herself,
Oh
before the
yeah, yeah,
cross is
yeah.
coming. And I'm going, it's just, I don't know. I just didn't like it. But the 79 version is, this sounds goofy, but it's more like what I think would be realistic
Hmm.
if this
Yeah,
were
and
a real
yeah.
situation.
No, and I agree with you. The 2004 film I haven't watched very much. I've seen it. I saw it when it aired. I have it on DVD. I think I've revisited it maybe 2 times. My biggest problem with it is like I think the scene in it that really ruined it for me, or just it wasn't it when they tried to redo the Mike Ryerson scene with Jason Burke, and in the 2004 version it was Matthew Burke and Andre Braugher was playing Matthew Burke, but it just came off as it wasn't scary,
No.
it was silly. And I mean, I love that there's a lot of great people. I think James Cromwell was good in it as Father Callahan. I did like him. I
Yeah.
think Rutger Hauer was good in it for what he
Mhm.
was given. But I don't like Donald Sutherland very much, and I hated his version of Straker. And I think that was one of the biggest problems I had with it, is that I love James Mason because he's so cool as Straker.
Yeah.
You see moments in the film where he's kind of contemplating what he's doing, like when he tells Larry Crockett to have them go and get, go to the Portland docks and get the crate, and you see him sitting there just realizing what he's doing and realizing what he's putting in motion, that there's no going back pretty much. And I just felt like Donald Sutherland was so over the top that it just came off as phony and forced. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to give it a chance, but like I said, I think there's some elements of it I like, but it's not a film I would revisit again.
Yeah, it's funny. I was able to speak with Rutger Hauer several years back.
He's a great actor. He was a great actor.
The problem was I didn't really watch a lot of his stuff. So when I was talking to him, I was trying to be nice, and I was Salem's Lot fan, period.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, my favorite thing that I've seen you in is Salem's Lot. And he kind of went, really? He was almost surprised about that. So I kind of walked away going, I wonder what his opinion of this 04 movie is. But anyway, he was a very nice guy. But
yeah, I liked him in The Hitcher. I think The Hitcher is probably one of my favorite movies he's done. He's absolutely terrifying in that movie. They remade The Hitcher with I can't think of his name. Sean Bean playing the John Ryder character, and Sean Bean is good, and I actually think it's a decent remake. But that first one, wow, Rutger Hauer is so scary, and it's just the minimalist way that he approaches it. It's like a person that just doesn't care, and I think that's what makes him so terrifying. It's not that he's shouting, it's not that he's in your face. It's just his calm coolness that makes you fearful.
Yeah, and sometimes less is better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So less is more.
So I want to ask you about Barlow. You and I both know, all the fans know, that they took more of that Nosferatu style makeup with him. Then you have Rutger playing him with more of a human look. I don't know. Could they have pulled it off in 79 with a more human look and done it effectively? I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's funny, I guess, because I saw the movie before I read the book, and I've read the book 3 times. It's funny. This is my old copy of it. It's actually, I have a better version of this, but this is the book I had as a little kid.
Wow.
And
that's awesome.
It's funny. I think the character of Barlow as he is in the book works. But for the movie, I like that Straker they take the elements of Barlow and give him to Straker more, and then Barlow is more of the wild animal, and Straker is more sort of the kind of the keeper of the beast, if you want to call it that. Yeah. I think that works better for me. I don't know why, but that version, I don't think I'd want to see like the Rutger Hauer version in the 79. I don't think it would have been as impactful, because again, your imagination goes and you just think about this creature that looks like Reggie Nalder did in the film walking the streets of Salem's Lot. And I think that's scarier than a man that would be like Count Dracula. That's just my opinion. Yeah. I still think Barlow is the scariest vampire ever put on film. That's that makeup and his performance. It just, the scene in Mark Petrie's house is where he attacks Mark and his parents, I still think is one of the best scenes in the film.
Absolutely.
And it gets me every time I watch it.
Yeah. I just love it because you have everything happening at one time, and
Mhm.
with the boys coming through the window, it's just this music and that eerie look, but all of a sudden here
Mhm.
comes Barlow and the chairs going across the floor and everything's shaking, the lights blow out, the phone is
Mhm.
ringing. He comes in like you would anticipate someone looking like that would, just to come in and
Mhm.
smash heads and take names. So it was a
And I like
pretty
the way he
thing.
sort of stands too. It's almost like it looks like just like a black material or something, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it just sort of rises. And I love that. I think that's what makes it. It's a build to seeing him and
Yeah.
how big he is. Yeah.
And this is very, very specific, but when he's standing there and he's got Mark like
Hmm.
this, and then Straker is kind of negotiating with Father Callahan, and
Yeah.
he's just standing there like this. He has his hand out and he's just kind of looking around. It is so
It's
freaky.
and the sounds they use the sound effects of the whatever you want to call it, the snarling or whatever
Yeah,
it is, that the sound effects are another thing that just bring that character to life.
absolutely.
I love that scene.
I want to ask you, you've read the book, I've read the book. What do you think there's anything from the 79 movie? And I know they've had, several different versions of this thing, but
Mhm.
what's it missing? What would you have liked to have seen in there?
I'm trying to remember. I haven't read the book in a number. I read it 3 times, but I read it, like read it when I was like 10 or 11. Then I read it when I was like 15. Then I read it when I was like 20. So it's been a while since I've read it.
Yeah.
Um, I can really speak more to things in the movie that I wish they would have. I know that in regards to the movie, there was more stuff with Reggie Nelder that ended up being cut, and I don't know exactly what it was,
Mhm.
but I know he was disappointed that they cut out some of the scenes that he was in.
Okay.
Also, I would have liked to have had more of a closure to Jason Burke in the
Yeah.
movie, because you kind of see him in the hospital after the heart attack, and then it's kind of over, and you
Yeah.
don't know what happens. And you really don't know what happens to Susan's mother either. They say they're gonna,
Mhm.
that Barbara's like they're still waiting for her to come, and so she was still waiting for Susan to pick her up, and that was kind of it. And so there was a couple of little, I think, moments that I think they could have, maybe filled in those gaps, or sort of some explanation as to what happened to some of these characters.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I those are some little things. That's easier for me to speak to because, like I said, I haven't read the book in a number of years. And I feel like, yeah, they condensed a lot of characters. And I know in the 2004 series, they actually made, I think Jimmy Cody was his name, was the doctor,
Mhm.
because Bill Norton wasn't the doctor in the book.
Yeah.
So they kind of split him off. And I don't even think Bill Norton was in the miniseries, the 2004 miniseries. But I mean, there was some things that were kind of cool in the miniseries. I thought the stairs collapsing and
Mhm.
Jimmy Cody being killed that way, that was cool, because that was kind of, they did the antlers for Bill Norton in the '79 film. But
Mhm.
yeah, the things that always stick out to me are those elements from the '79 film that they never really had to know what happened to those characters.
Yeah. I
I feel like
think,
they either got bitten or they died, I guess.
yeah. I you know I would love to have seen Susan come up to the window. She does that in the
Oh,
book.
Mark. She goes to
Yeah.
Mark's room. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, of course, when you're trying to condense it into a TV series, you have to make changes for time's sake and all. But it would have been nice to see her, because I'm trying to imagine Bonnie Bedelia wearing that dress she's wearing at the end
Mm-hmm.
when she finds Ben again, and I'm trying to imagine that that look of her coming up to Mark's window.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, I think it would have. I would love to have seen that. So I
I
don't
remember
know.
reading that and I said, "Oh, that would have been different," because
Hmm.
that was one thing the miniseries did do, is they executed it a little bit different, but Susan was turned pretty much in the middle of the book, whereas in
Hmm.
the '79 miniseries, it was at the end and you didn't know what happened to her. And if you have the 2-hour version of the miniseries, never shows what happens to her. So it's kind of like a weird, like it just cuts off after the house burns down. You never see the Guatemala stuff
Yeah.
where they run into her, and I'm like, I don't know how they aired that or like released that with not having any closure to that relationship.
Yeah.
between her. And I would have liked to have seen, Ben searching the Marston house for her at the end before they set fire to the house. I mean, did he
Yeah.
look for her? I mean, I thought he might have, or maybe they just set it on fire thinking it was lost cause. Again, that's my fanboy brain going.
Yeah. And I, I just think there's so many unanswered questions in the 79, and I know you can't do it, but there's
Yeah.
just so many things that I would like to know more about. Because, when Susan, Straker says, I took her to meet the
The
man she came
mansion.
here.
Yeah.
All right. Where is she? Because she's not down, when you see them go into the cellar and
Mhm.
you've got the Glick boys and even
Mike
Weasels
Myers.
over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's Susan?
Yeah. It is odd. Like, where was she? Like, why wasn't she in the basement still? And that's kind of, and in the book, if I remember correctly, she calls to Mark from the basement.
She
She's
does.
like, I need you to come down here. And if I remember, I can't remember the words correctly, but I remember that was eerie to me reading it as a kid. And I'm like, oh, that would have been different. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you know about the different versions of the movie? I've read some, but
You
what are
mean in
they
terms
cutting?
of of the 79 one, or
Yeah,
just
the 79 one.
well, I have there was a movie version that they aired
Mhm.
on like cable TV, HBO, and
Yeah.
for the longest time that was the way I saw it. You can't buy it on Blu-ray like that or DVD like that, and it's just sort of like, it's almost like the epilogue and the prologue are cut off.
Okay.
It just starts with Ben driving into town. He never walks up to the house, and there's never that exchange between him and Straker at the beginning. Before he goes to Crockett Realty. It's almost like it's just really choppy. It's quicker. I know when I went to the thing in Ferndale, a lot of people said, "Oh my God, this movie's so long," and I'm like going, "Yeah," I said, "there is a 2 hour version, but it's just so. If you like character development, you won't like
Mhm.
the 2 hour version." And for the longest time, it was the only accessible version that I had. I have a version of it. I mean, I still have my. This is the two tapes. I've had this since like I think 90. Oh God, 93 I think was when I got that. So it's like, but I have the movie version of that too because they released them at the same time.
Mhm.
But the movie version is much shorter. A lot of characters are cut out of it, like a lot of stuff with like Weasel and oh God, Eva Miller. There's a lot of stuff that's just cut out of the movie. A lot of stuff with Ned Tebbets is cut out. George DeZanza, the Cully is barely in it. It's just like I said, if you like these characters,
Yeah.
you're not gonna like it. And even the first scene with Ralphie going to Danny Glick's room is cut out, so it just shows Danny in the hospital,
Oh,
and Ralphie
wow.
just comes to the hospital window. So that whole beginning, that one's completely cut out of it.
Mhm.
It's very choppy, and I just never cared for it. After seeing the full mini series when I was about, I think they re-aired the full mini series. I was 11, and
Mhm.
then I was like, I never want to watch the 2 hour version again.
All right.
But yeah, I really I've only watched the 2 hour version I think one other time in the last 20-25 years. So it's like it's always the full miniseries.
Well, all right. Tell me if I'm crazy. I was on the Facebook page, the Victims of Salem's Lot, and somebody mentioned um, a shot of Hubie Marston hanging. And all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, I had forgotten all about that, but that is somewhere in my mind that I had totally forgotten. So I'm wondering, does one of the versions have that shot? I think it might have been when Ben was talking about what he saw when he went in the Marston house with Jason Burke.
I don't
Is
remember seeing that. I remember it's for some reason I do remember somebody bringing that up, but
Mhm.
I don't remember seeing that. I know it was cut in Europe. I don't know if it was a different version of the 2 hour version that aired here in the States. But I always remember him talking about Huey Marston hanging. And I think in the 2004 version, you see him hanging. but
Oh,
I never
yeah.
remember an image of that. In the 2004 version, you see him do it because Ben goes into the house as a kid and sees him hang himself. And
Yeah.
the 79 version, he's just talking to Jason about it when they're having dinner.
Right.
But yeah, I don't remember. I never saw that image.
Okay. Well, it's one of those things that I'm going, well, did I dream it or did I plan it in my head because somebody said it? I don't know. But anyway, so
Okay.
you've been to Ferndale.
Yeah.
I love this town. I plan to go in this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually supposed to be there in October, but
Yeah.
what happened to
The
everybody?
obvious. Yeah.
So the obvious.
Yeah.
So I have all that airline credit has to be used. So I'm going to go to Ferndale. What were you able to see while you were there from the movie?
I've been to Ferndale. So the first time I went to Ferndale, just to give you a little history.
Hmm.
Now in 1988, my family took a trip to Eureka, which is just up past
Mm-hmm.
Ferndale. And we decided when we drove back home that we would stop in this little town called Victorian Village,
Mm-hmm.
Ferndale. My mom wanted to look at the houses because, the Victorian houses. And for some reason, as a 14-year-old kid who had seen Salem's Lot probably 60 times by that point, I just remember we drove down this street and I looked again and I go, this looks like the street Ben Mears drives down in Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
My family thought I was crazy. They said no. They shot that movie in Maine. Again, it's 1988. There was no, internet or anything like that. So I said, okay, they shot it in Maine. I guess for some reason the street looks familiar. And then like 10 years later, I was at a comic convention. I bought an old magazine, a Cinema Fantastique magazine about Salem's Lot when they filmed it. Saw right in the head, right as I was reading the article, it said Ferndale, California is where they shot the exteriors. So 10 years later, I was proved right. It was Salem's Lot. And I went back there one time with an ex-girlfriend just to drive through the town.
Mm-hmm.
Did it really quickly. And then my wife and I actually got engaged there in 2001. So we got engaged in the town. We spent our honeymoon in the town. We've gone back. I've been to the town probably 9 times.
Oh, wow.
So it's, the first thing I did when I stayed there, I walked up to where the Marston house was because, it was a giant house built around a small house.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a little tiny cottage up on that hill, and the area around it, as they've built more since the 70s. So there's more houses like close to it.
Okay.
But it still looks, the trees, they've cut the trees down a little bit, but it's still, the hill and everything like that. The rock wall and all that was built. So some of that is, just for the movie, but there's a lot of areas that just look exactly the same. Jason Burke's house, I found the last time I was there, looks just like it did in the movie. I found the school is there. Trying to think. We stayed the last time we were there. The exteriors for Barlow and Straker's is an Airbnb now, so we actually stayed there.
Oh, you did.
We actually
Right.
stayed in the building, and that was a trip because it's the interior of Straker's and Barlow's is a set, but the exterior, it looks exactly the same. The steps leading up to it are a little shorter, but what an honor being able to stay there. And that was just blowing my mind. I'm like, wow, we're staying. Yeah. And it's where Crockett Realty is across the street. The cemetery is amazing to go in.
Oh,
they didn't do a lot of the shots so a lot of the cemetery stuff, there's several shots that are done there. Of course, when they drive into Danny Glick's funeral and leave, that's all Ferndale. There's one shot of Mike Ryerson getting the dirt on the shovel.
Yeah.
And the town's behind him. But all the other shots of the cemetery were done in Franklin Canyon in LA. So a lot of it was actually done in Franklin Canyon. So there was parts I was trying to find, and I'm like going, where is this?
Yeah.
And Salem's Lot Here and Now, that website really breaks it down of like what was shot in Ferndale and what wasn't.
Yeah, that's a great
really
website.
Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I've seen quite a bit. It's they had the anniversary event there a year and a half ago, and they had a little map, and I had already been to all the places that were on the map, so I was trying to find places I hadn't been to. So like Jason Burke's house was a big find. Finding the doctor's office that Ben runs into to tell Bill that Gillespie was leaving town when he runs up the steps and everything. I found that place. It's actually one of the elementary schools there. So it's like,
Oh,
and I
okay.
found the church where he gets the holy water. They're
Mhm.
all kind of on the same street. So it's
Mhm.
a trip. I mean, pretty much found every location. The only ones I need to go back and get are Gillespie's house,
Mhm.
and then the scenes where Ben's driving into town at the beginning. So those are the ones
Yeah.
I want to find.
I have all of these. Well, I went on the Salem's Lot Here and Now site, and
It's a great site.
it is. And I was able to pinpoint everything on Google Earth because I'm that much of a nerd about it. So,
Yeah.
so when I go this summer, I will be able to spend several days because I'm pretty much off all summer. And so
Nice.
I'll be able to spend hopefully a good week there and can hit everything and try the local food. And I hear the Victorian Inn is a little pricey, but it's supposed to be top quality food. So I'm looking forward to, just getting to know that town. And
It's a nice place. The Victorian. We stayed there on our honeymoon, so it's a very nice place. The Gingerbread Mansion is a nice place. Good pizza parlor there. The Ferndale Pizza Company is a great place, so I recommend that place 100%.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thanks so much for hanging out with me and letting me discuss my favorite movie of all time. If you haven't seen Salem's Lot, check it out.
Absolutely.
I have it on Amazon Prime. I know it's probably available on several outlets, but definitely check it out. It might be old, but it's awesome. There, he's got his copy. That's great.
Yep.
So,
VHS.
oh man, you were hooked up.
Yeah.
And hey, man, when I go to Ferndale this summer, I'll let you know when, and if it works out, maybe we can meet up or something.
That would be great. Yeah, it's only about a 4.5 hour drive for me, so it's not too far.
That's not bad. Well, I'm in Georgia, so it's about a 3-day drive. So
yeah, no, you got a long way.
yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I hope you have a great one, bud.
Oh, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure.
Well, guys, I want to thank Ben Ottaviano one more time for hanging out with me to discuss Salem's Lot. Hey, let's show him some love. He's got a great channel. Go to Boogeyman Ben and click subscribe and the notification bell to help Ben out. He's a great guy, got a lot of great content. And we have a lot of great content that will continue to come out here all the time, right here on Everything 101. So please click subscribe, notification bell, and give me some likes and some comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Well, guys, that's about it for this episode. Hey, till I see you again, I wish for you and all your family and friends peace and blessings. I'll see you real soon.